welcome up Tracy.
Thank you, guys. So, thank you so much, Aaron. And I'm honored to be invited to speak to you guys because I've met many of you before at Magnify Your Wealth and have been so impressed with how far along so many of your businesses are and the models in which you guys use. So what I really wanted to give you, because Aaron called me Thursday night, and said, hey, I'd like you to do something different than you normally do. And I said, well, you know what, at least you're in luck that I've been thinking about doing something different this year, and I've been preparing this new talk for a new sphere of influence, or a center of influence, that I'm going to be speaking into, which is the content marketing world. So that you guys get the first time. And I customized it for you. So some of you may not be numbers people, but I know some of you are. Yeah. So I brought some numbers for you. It is really hard to be heard. If you're wondering why it's hard to get your marketing out there, why it's not working, why a lot of these things are hard, it is because there are 80 million YouTube channels. And there's like 1.5 billion or some crazy number YouTube videos downloaded every single day. Kind of hard. 40 million Facebook pages. I think that number is like a year old, so it's probably like double that by now at least. 32 million Twitter users. Of course, half of them may be bots. We're not sure. 800 million Instagram users. And social conversion. This is conversion meaning if you put out an ad. So this is based on pay, not just your normal posting. It's only 1.3%. That means you got to reach a whole lot more people to have an effective group that you might be pulling in, course enrollees, whatever it is you might be doing. But Google conversion's 13%. And that hasn't changed. It is more powerful. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. Some interesting things we'll start talking about also is that podcast conversion, and we've tested it across many, many clients, is 37%. That trust factor that we're going to talk about. So selling, this is the market I know, right? I know selling. I know selling mostly into big box, but I also know Amazon. It is harder to sell. And it doesn't matter whether it's a hard good or a soft good, or it's a service or course, book, whatever it is really hard. Here's kind of the statistics for Amazon. I think this might be a year old as well. 562 million products on Amazon, 5 million Amazon sellers, 140,000 of those sellers make 100,000 per year or more. That's pretty sad. But I know this, only 2% of patents make money. Think about this. How many patents has Apple filed? Like tons. And that's not skewing that number. So there are so many unsuccessful products in the world. And Tom and I have over the years dialed it down. But we found that it translates into services tremendously well as well. So we're going to get to some of that. So here's Tom. You guys met him. Here's that 3D printed tie, actually, though. So our first podcast was called WTFFF, which, if you don't know what that stands for, then you're not geeky enough to listen to our show. So it's an invitation in. We did it on purpose to make sure that they were at least enough in the know that we didn't have to dumb it down so much that we couldn't talk a little bit of tech. But it's not a tech-focused show. It's more of a show on how the technology can be used rather than what the technology is, although we go into that too. Feed Your Brand is our podcast for podcasters. I have some listeners here, I know. The new Trust Economy comes out next week. That's with a new co-host. That's the first time Tom and I aren't co-hosting together. I'm hosting with a woman named Monica Profit. So it's Profit and Hazard. And it's all about blockchain. And then Product Launch Hazards is my podcast for for product people and inventors and Amazon sellers. And I really don't record very many. There's a whole group of 20 experts who do most of the work for me. And they record and they connect, and we've built a collaborative marketing. And we can talk about that at some point if that model interests you. I write for Inc. magazine, and Tom and I were featured in Harvard Business Review for going viral before social media existed. And it's also a way at which we fought IDEO and Palm Computing, one of the largest industrial design firms in the world. And Palm Computing, if you guys don't remember, then you're not as old as I am. So handheld computers. So what makes us more successful? What is it that we do? You want me to talk louder? Yes, I'm sorry. I'm usually really loud, so I'm afraid to blow you all out in the front row. Okay, got it. I will talk louder. Okay, so what is it that we do that we bring to the table that is so different? We bring this it factor, right? We bring this, like, me only, we call it, right? We want to put you into competitive proof me only territory. How can we do that? Well, in product world, we do it a lot with patenting, but we also do it with a lot with what we call proprietary processes, technology, innovation, whatever that might be. So there's a lot of innovation there. But there's always, it's your thing. It's what makes people attracted to you, what makes you special, what is unique about you. This is your brand value, if you've heard that in the branding worlds. So that it factor, that's why I'm calling that here, because it depends on your business and depends on what you're trying to market here. But the it factor is the key thing. We never forget that. That's the number one thing we start with, because if you don't have that, it is really, it's going to be a price play, it's going to be a positioning play, it's going to be how many dollars can I throw at my position, my marketing, how many people do I know, am I more influential than other people already, so am I starting at a better pace? So it's, whether you're writing a book, that book has to have a unique position. So that it factor is the most critical and important thing we start with. Now, it might be wrong. That's okay. It might be a hypothesis. I think this is the it thing. We'll confirm it, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Because we have to make sure that the dogs will eat the dog food, right? That's how we confirm that it was really good. Our formula was great. Our taste is really good. But that's actually the whole key. Because dogs don't buy dog food. Who buys dog food? People do. Humans, right? They're loving humans. So we actually have to make sure not only do the dogs love it, but the humans will buy it. So our conversion that we care about is, will somebody plunk down $1 for what I have to bring to the table? Will they convert on that? Will they engage with me? Will they be active about it? So that's what we really care about, our it factor at the end of the day. And the sooner we can test that and find out whether that's true, the better off we are. We want to make sure that the market, that those people are reachable, they're measurable, and there is some competition. And the reason I say that is because I get inventors and service people who say, like, I'm the only person in the world who's doing that, which I know is not true. And I know you investors in the world are like rolling your eyes because you guys hear it too. And yeah, you're like, oh, it's like blue ocean territory. That is so rare, I have yet to see it. So, you know, you want to make sure there's some competition, because if it is truly the case that it's blue ocean, you will probably never succeed at that unless you have tons of money to pour into it.
And just as a side note, if nobody's doing it, there's a reason.
There's a reason. That's exactly it, right. Okay, so does size matter of the market? What do you guys think? This is also a play on when we had our stylus pens for handheld computers, which is how we sold it. We used to have how we went viral was, do we detect a bit of pen envy? Because it was a stylus pen. So anyway, play on that. Influencers have a large following. What do you guys think? Your Instagram daughter, large following, right? This is what we care about. We want a loyal and active following. Because the only thing we can do when we have a million listeners, a million viewers, a million fans, is get more. Because the attrition rate goes way up, and the activity goes way down. The bigger our audience gets, actually the worse engagement gets. So the only thing we can do is get bigger. But we can dial it in deeper and get a really loyal and active following in any niche. Now, it may grow to a really large size, and that's fantastic, but we really want to make sure that it's loyal and active, because from day one, we can do something with that. So that's our number 2 thing, is we want to really build that following in that right way. And remember, this is your victory garden, Michelle. This is your hypothesis. Remember I said that before? This is an experiment. So it's okay for it to be wrong. It's because we didn't spend a ton of money, and we're not going to spend a ton of money doing this, right? We're trying out to see if the it factor resonates with the followers we can attract, or the followers we think we want to attract, and we're bringing them together to see if we get a beautiful strawberry crop this year. So it's an experiment, and that's okay. We need to be comfortable in that world, because that's how we turn. You've heard the terms fail fast, right? Fail fast, fail frequent, like all of those things. That's what we're going to try to do here, because my goal with all of my clients over the last 27 years has been to make sure that we don't get them spending their entire budget before we know whether the dogs will eat the dog food and the people will buy them for them. We want to know that as soon as possible. And I prefer to know it before I've ever built the product. That's key here. So, what is the OPA plan? Does anyone know what OPA stands for? OPA. No. Other people's money, other people's authority, other people's audience, right? So we're using a play on what's going on in the real estate world. Other people's audience plan is what we're going for here. So a really great way to test out whether or not our audience is a match for our message is to what? Go find somebody else's audience and go talk to them. Go guest on their show. Go write a blog post on their site. Go do a social media live stream with them. Do something where you're engaging with their audience to find out. And have we spent any money? Probably not. If you do have to spend money, then I suggest not going into the audience. I think it's better to test it, only because, John Lee Dumas, I don't know, what did he charge, like $5,000 for a spot on his show? The engagement is actually so low that it's not worth the $5,000 at the end of the day, because unless his audience is really totally your audience. So you'd have to know that ahead of time. So you can find all kinds of ways to go reach somebody's audience just to confirm whether or not your idea has resonance. Does anyone speak back to you? Is the host engaged? Are they endorsing it? Like, there's so many ways we can check with that audience. Now, what we also want to do is leverage that early on, and we'll talk about that. I call that the guesting strategy or the interview strategy. So, how do I do that? Well, I use my in column all the time to get to famous people. This was actually a really unsuccessful famous person who failed to share the articles. But that happens all the time. The bigger they are, sometimes the worse they are at sharing your message to their audience. So you want to kind of play in that middle ground of they need you a little bit too. But you can use your authority power as a host. So this is what we do with our podcasters. We teach them, our podcasters, videocasters, we teach them to use the power of being the host to attract people who have audiences that you want to show up on your feed. You want them to come to you. You want the right group of them to transfer to you. So that's one of the things that we work on with other people's audiences. So we really didn't have to spend a lot of money at that point to go sending traffic, bringing in leads, putting out ads on Google or Facebook or wherever. We don't have to do that. We just merely go start guesting and then start inviting into our show. Now, we can just invite them into a live stream show. We don't have to have a formal podcast. We don't have to have a formal video cast. None of that has to be formal at that point. We're inviting them in for publicity to expose them to our audience, even if it might be limited. Most often they say yes. So I've been writing my column this is my 4th year. The story of how I got my column is that we started the podcast WTFFF in 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago. 5 years ago, and that fall I was invited to give a speech at a makers conference in LA. The LA bureau chief editor for Inc. saw me there, and I gave this talk on makers making profit, which was an unusual topic, and said, we want this nitty-gritty advice. We're starting a new section of the magazine called Innovation. Would you come and write a column on product design? And I said, okay, I'll write a column. It's called By Design, but I don't just want to write about product design. Can I write about marketing? Can I write about branding? Can I write about all these things? And can I write about women? And they said, yes, great. So I pretty much had free reign to write about, as long as it's innovation focused, to write about anything I want and to choose who I write about. And I write 6 articles a month, so that's a lot of people, and I use an interview for every single one. So you can imagine how many people I've been able to touch. And if I asked you and said, hey, would you like to be interviewed for Inc. magazine?
Yes.
Right? Who says no? Right? Never happened. I've had a few that said I can't do it this month. Can I do it next month? But I've never had a no. So there's a lot of power in that authority, and we can use it to our advantage. So this is something that I've heard at a talk before, and I wish I could remember who said it. But it's like when Oprah interviews people, is she more powerful or is John Travolta more powerful? Who's more powerful? Oprah. because she's more influential in her circle, right? In her fans. She's the center of that influence. He is not. He's invited in. So the host becomes the center of that influence, and it starts to grow out from there. So that's what we're really looking for. Another way that we have, this is a technical thing, and there's a whole podcast show about it on Feed Your Brand if you're interested. We call it ego bait. Remember how I mentioned that John Travolta really, his PR team wanted me to interview him, even though I essentially am a blogger, right? Because I write an online column. And because they wanted less video and more written content. Why? Because it's more powerful to Google, right? We talked about that at the beginning, right? It's more powerful to Google. So they wanted this, but then they failed to put it on their website. So there's no link back to me, there's no link back to my article. The benefit didn't happen. And so I found this happening again and again and again. The bigger the person was, or the less technically savvy they were, but maybe the great speaker that they were, that it was problematic, right? So I invented this thing, I call it ego bait. And I named it after my friend Ken Courtwright talks about ego bait. But it's not the same, but I named it after that because I liked the name. And so, so what it is it can be one of two things. This is Tonya Rainier. Her podcast is called Profit Party. She interviewed, this is Tonya, they kind of look the same, which is unfortunate, but this is her guest. And so it's, her guest is named Christy, and she says, when you can share a story that is rich and igniting different senses, it uses different parts of the brain. It's a great quote. It's a great something that guest said on your show. And so she's highlighting that guest and how smart they are. And so when she shares it out on her social media, do you think Christy puts it on hers? Absolutely, right? But we go one step further. We actually send them a follow-up email and say, hey, your show with Tonya is published. Here's all the links for how to share it. Here's an embed code you can give to your web developer. So if you don't know how to do it, just give them that. And we've technically put in everything they need to be able to share out the right graphic and the right link and do everything. And then another way we do it also is that sometimes it's just Tonya's show, like she doesn't have a guest, and we also put out a quote that she says, makes her look good, and when she shares that, lots of people repost that, like it's, you know, like you found it on one of those quote websites or something like that. It starts to become one of those. It ends up on Pinterest all the time. Your fans start pinning it and share it on Instagram. So it really becomes useful in branding for her company as well. So that's how we call it. We call it ego bait because they can't help but not share it. And that's another way that we're leveraging other people's authority, other people's audience, because we're making sure that they share it with their audience. We've removed all technical barriers, and we've really made it easy for them. So now that we found out, right, that our it factor's working, that our audience is the right audience we want to attract, then we're going to now go and now we have to serve that audience. We're not pushing messages at them. We're not selling them anything yet. We are simply serving them. We're serving them a whole lot of balls here. We're going to serve them a lot of great content because the more we serve, the more we will eventually get back to us. So this is I studied Dale Carnegie 25 years ago. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years trying to get other people interested in you, right? Yeah. Sterling, when you were telling that story about how you were asking for advice versus saying, hey, I've got something to sell you, more people return your calls, more things happen for you. This is that same model and same idea, right? You're interested in other people. So inviting them to be on your show, I can tell you that I sell more podcasts, production services. We sell more of our consulting, more of our courses, more of those things. And if we don't, to people we invite on our show faster because we build a higher trust level with them and we've just given them amazing publicity, than we do any other way. And it's never intended. It's just, oh, we get off the phone, thank you so much, here's what's gonna happen, you're gonna get this follow-up email from our team, it will be produced in 7 days, like all of that, and they go, how do you do that? I've been struggling with my show. And the next thing you know, we're in a sales call, Like that's how that occurs. It is absolutely organic and natural, and it was never an intended consequence, it just happens that way. So that is one of those things. And if they aren't interested, the one thing that they do is they go back and rave your friends. I had the most professional interview with someone, and oh my gosh, they were amazing. And when they sent me this, I got this cool email with all these links in it. You have a podcast show, you should go, I'm gonna refer you to them. So we get, I don't know, Tom, how many referrals do you get a day? Like 5 or 6?
Yeah, not a day goes by that we don't get at least 4 or 5 referrals, and sometimes it's 10 and 12. I struggle to keep up with it.
Yeah, so, good problems to have, right? So now that we've got our it factor, our audience, and we've really got like dialed in on how we're gonna use this, we're gonna leverage this other people's audience thing, we would need to be, and we're serving them great content, of course, right? We're serving them stuff they wanna hear. Now we need to be everywhere. And that's where you all go, oh God, Tracy, I can't do one more thing. I'm like overwhelmed, I'm at my wit's end, right? I hear it from all of you. And when I say, oh, you gotta be on social, you gotta blog, you got a video, you got a podcast, right? Like, that's a lot of work. But you know what? I can't stand to do that much work. And this is where conversations like the one Erin and we had early on was like, we were producing 5 shows a week, 20 a month on our 3D print podcast, and we weren't making a single dime off of it. Like there was no money exchange, like we hadn't taken sponsors yet. I think when I first met Erin, none of that had happened. And so we were doing a lot of service, right? And it wasn't our core business. So like the people who were coming to us were never gonna become our clients. So it wasn't really a match. So it was our victory garden that failed. It was our strawberry experiment that failed. We realized we shouldn't have a business in 3D printing, but we should have a business in 3D printing information because it's more valuable. That's what we found. So it was a successful failure. But when we do that, though, what we had discovered that having to be everywhere was critically important, but it was also a lot of work. So we streamlined that. And that's one of the things that I want you to talk about, I want to talk with you about today is like, how do we streamline some of these things so we're not actually doing more, we're actually doing less? Because the thing we're doing are more effective, and they're helping us do all the other things so we don't have to write blogs separate from our videos, separate from our podcast audios. We don't have to do everything in its own silo and treat it like a separate thing. We do one thing, and we either syndicate it or we have it repurposed and reused, which is the next thing that we'll talk about. So one of the most important things, I'm going to talk about a few technical things here because I know I got some techies in the group. And I want to make sure I touch on some things that are really critically important for you guys to know probably why some of your marketing's not working or why things have started falling apart. We've seen it a lot in the Amazon selling world. We've seen it a lot in passive income websites, if you guys know what those are. Those are websites that are basically don't own anything. They just are selling other people's stuff through ads on their sites. So one of the most important things that's going on right now is voice recognition. Because of Alexa, because of Google Home, especially because of Google Home, because remember, Google controls the keys to just pretty much every castle right now. And so, their power right now is that they own YouTube, so you've got videos covered. They just started Google Podcasts, and you don't have to do any work to get listed in there. If you already have a podcast, they found you, they've listed you. And they pretty much send their, I know it's not spiders anymore, but whatever it is, they send their stuff through your websites, and they do it so you don't have to do anything to get listed on Google, right? Except make sure that you have really great content and stuff. But they're gonna list you and rank you and do all of that, and you have to do nothing in that process. So Google makes it really easy. Alexa makes it a little harder. We gotta make sure we are listed in her right directory, and that you say, Alexa, can you play the Feed Your Brand podcast on TuneIn? So I not only have to get my listeners to say it exactly the right way. So it's a little harder there, but Google makes it easy. So these are the ones we want to, but voice recognition has been coming for a while, and the algorithms have shifted over time to recognize voice pattern better than written pattern. And there are a couple reasons for it. One is that they are moving to something called real personas. And real personas means I want to make sure this isn't a fake site. I want to make sure this isn't a bot, this isn't something fake. So I want to make sure there's a real person behind it. And a voice pattern is a good sign of that. And if I've got audio on my site and video on my site and there's a real person answering emails or returning comments, then I got a better site than another one that I might have over here, which might be spammy. And that pisses my clients, that pisses the Google clients off when they go through and you type in something and all you get are the first 10 are all junk, all push selling, all not real information, right? And then people stop trusting Google. And they can't have that because they're all about experience. The second part of it is relevance. So relevance is something that Google cares about. They care if I'm a writer, I probably like to read, right? So I'm a reader. Tom might like to watch videos, and Sean might like to listen to podcasts, right? So we've got all of these different media that we prefer to consume. So if I type into Google how to build wealth, and I'm a podcast listener, Aaron's podcast might show up, right? Because it might be a really common word. But if he didn't have a video and I'm a video watcher, maybe I'm not going to get him at all. I might get somebody else altogether. So if you're producing content and you're not putting it in all the media, this is why I say be everywhere, then you're missing the boat. Now, do you need it to be specifically done for video? No. It can be the same content from video to audio to blog, exactly the same. You don't have to do it different because they're typing in a specific keyword. They're looking for that content. Now, do you want to have some pro-looking videos? Definitely. I got to have my hair done, which is why I chose to podcast first and not to videocast about 5 years ago, right? Exactly. Now, I kind of don't care, and if you've seen me on my live stream, it might be up in a ponytail or like, you know, yeah. So you kind of get desensitized to it, but 5 years ago, I really cared, right? So anyway, so that's what we want to be. We want to be relevant. This is one other thing I want you guys to realize. Remember those numbers I told you? About how many websites there are, about how much information, how hard it is to be heard? There's only 500,000 podcasts worldwide, but there's only about 200 to 250,000 of them that are actually active today. That's a really small pond to be playing with in the world of the internet, right? So this is be relevant. So we were just talking about relevancy, but 1 in 5 Google searches is new every single day, meaning Google's never seen it before. So when we were speaking about 3D printing, like there were terms no one ever heard of. What's a build plate? What's layer heights? Like, you know, all kinds of different things that they never heard before. And so when we were talking about it, it was naturally giving a place to go. So Google was giving us more and more authority faster and faster. And so what happened in the statistics, because I want to give you some numbers so you guys have a good idea of it, is that what happened was we started a podcast in April. By October 31st, we were featured in Forbes for having the fastest growing podcast, and we had grown 25,000 listeners in it was like a little 4.5 months. And we thought that was really small. Like we thought we were, it was not, 100,000 listeners at that time that John Lee Dumas was doing, and he eventually ended up over 1 million. So we thought it was really small. But we knew we had a really active community who was binge listening to us. They would listen to it. At that point, we hit 100 podcast episodes, had over 100. And so they were binge listening. They would say, I just listened to all your episodes. And I thought it was crazy. Because I did not know like people would be binge watching Netflix. I didn't really get that, and I was like, can someone really listen to me for 100 episodes in a weekend? Like, that sounds crazy. And then what I found out is not only do they binge listen, but they're pod fasters, and they put it on double speed. Do you hear how fast I talk? I must sound like a chipmunk. So anyway, but if 1 in 5 searches is new, Google has to decide who's valuable. And when we were putting out content 5 days a week on the main topic, and they knew that it was related to that, they sent people our way left and right. And so what we didn't know at that time, because we had just launched a brand new website called 3D Start Point, that what we didn't know at that time was that they were already starting to send our website the traffic, and it was in what they call the Google sandbox. When you have a brand new podcast, a brand new website, they don't know how to rank it yet. They don't know whether or not you deserve ranking, or you just, fly by night, you just showed up out of nowhere, and they usually take a little time. They track your site and they watch it, and then when they decide, oh, this is putting out valuable information, they pull it out of the sandbox and they give you a ranking number. By January second, third, something like that, we were out of the Google sandbox already, and no one had realized it because they never checked it, because it just doesn't happen that fast normally. And so they said, we got this phone call from the people who managed our site, and they said, what are you doing? And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I know you told me I should write 40 blogs, but I got really busy. So I took our podcast and I had them transcribed and dropped into the website. Sorry. And they were like, this is brilliant. Do more of it. And we were like, okay. So we kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And you want to say something, don't you?
No.
Oh, okay. You look like my number was wrong. I saw that look. And so what happened was that our site started really growing, and I think we hit like 1.7 million out of the billion websites at that time, which is really amazing because a magazine like Inc. is under 1 million. That's pretty close for a brand new site. So we were really excited about that. So what we really want is to be where search happens, and that's the key here, is people were searching for something, and they were searching for it on YouTube, they were searching for it on Google, and we were getting credit for both, because we had videos that would show like how the machines work, and because they're always, 3D printing is visual, you can't go without a video. So we didn't do every episode like that, but we had video, we called them video companions. And so when we were on the podcast, we would say, hey, don't forget to go see the time-lapse video for this product we just made. And we would send them there, and they would go there. So they were searching both in YouTube and on Google for these terms and for us, and Google recognized that. But more importantly, we want to be when search happens. So that's the problem with live stream, right? If I put it out because it's convenient for me at lunchtime, and everybody's busy, right? My best LinkedIn active followers are on at 7 o'clock at night on Sunday. I missed them. I didn't, if I posted it, maybe they catch it, maybe they don't. Same thing happens on Facebook, right? I may have missed them. So I want to be when they want it, right? I always want to be there, and I want to be when they want it. So I've got to make sure that I'm repurposing that content and putting it someplace so that when they're looking for it, they can find me. And usually that's like, especially if you're diving into pain points, your health and wellness, anything like that, they're searching when they're stressed at 2, 3 in the morning. So now let's talk a little bit about what repurpose, reuse, and reshare. I kind of hinted at that. It's a content strategy. We're going to start from audio or video, right? It doesn't matter if you're not comfortable on audio and video. Don't do what makes you uncomfortable, because we want you to be authentically you. Start from the place that you're most comfortable with. I guarantee you, you will get worn down like me over time, and you will start doing videos. It just is going to happen. And then we want to brandcast. So we coined this term, that's why our company is called Brandcasting. We coined this term called brandcasting instead of podcasting, because it's a video, it's a blog, it's all of those things. And really our key to it is making sure that we are growing our website. Because what we don't care about is iTunes. What we don't care about is YouTube. What we care about is that those fans and those followers come back to us, where we have our courses, where we have our books for sale, where we have our products, where we are, because then there's more likelihood for direct engagement and for those fans to now become our audience and not other people's. Because remember, other people's audience might also be YouTube's, might be iTunes. So we need to have blog posts, because that's how SEO is ranked. It's all ranked on that. It doesn't matter how great the SEO on your website is. If you're not adding new content to it, you're not helping your site grow. So new content is a very important part of that. So I'm a writer. I write 6 articles a month. I can barely get those done. Could I write, and I don't know how about, does anyone write blogs here? How long does it take you to write a blog, Athena? 600, 800 words? Okay. What if I told you your blog post needs to be 3,000 words or more? How long would that take you? 3 hours. And that you had to really have like at least one a week. So now you're talking about 12 hours a month that you got to spend on blog post writing, because most valuable content, the content that hits the first page in Google, is more than 600 and 800 words. It's usually 3,000 plus words. But in 20 minutes, I talk fast, remember, in 20 minutes I can speak almost 6,000. Most people can do it in about 30 to 40 minutes. That outranks anyone's content any day of the week, right? So why don't we not make our blog post transcriptions? Google likes it. Now, do people like to read that? Most people know. But you know what happens? If you put your audio and your video up at the top of the post, they just stop there. They don't read they go, oh, that's too long. And they just listen, right? And now what are they doing? They're sitting on your website. It's called the stickiness factor. They're sitting on your website, reading, listening, watching. They didn't go to YouTube. They stayed on you. So now when the little pop-up comes in, would you like to subscribe? They think, oh, I'm subscribing to the video. I'm subscribing to the podcast. Actually, they're subscribing to your email list. They'll still get it, but they're subscribing to you. Not somebody else. They're subscribing to you. So that's what we want. You need to have a YouTube channel. Why? Because Google owns YouTube. So you got to have a channel, and you got to, whatever videos you do, even if you do them on Facebook and live stream, you drop them onto YouTube, and you get them tagged, and you get them ranking, not because people will find you in the billions of videos watched every day on on YouTube, but because when they type it into Google, you want that video to show up. So you care about that. We want to do interviews and ego bait. Why? Because we want other people to refer to our website. In technical terms, that's called a backlink, right? So if you've heard that term before when you've ever built a website before, backlinks are getting delisted and removed from people's sites left and right because there's a whole bunch of problems in the authenticity of those backlinks. Are they bought? Are they problematic? And we just had a site, in fact, where a web company came in and basically redid their site and added like overnight all these crazy backlinks, and their site that we had been ranking consistently and had gotten organic traffic and organic keyword growth went right into the basement. So those old school techniques can really hurt you. But what we're doing here by the interviews and the ego bait is this is natural. You actually interviewed this person. It's an authentic backlink to an article in which their name is featured. Google's never going to de-rank that. It's legitimate. So those are really important because of that. They're powering your website. You want to have social pages because having social interaction and having people come from Facebook into your website and things like that is actually really powerful for your website traffic and website growth as well. So you want to make sure that's happening. I actually don't care about my followership level. Like, I don't watch the numbers on it. I watch the engagement of it. Are people communicating with me? I do not have a ton of fans. I think I maybe have 5,000 followers on LinkedIn. It's my most active channel. But out of those 5,000, I could pretty much tap anyone and ask them, do you want to be on my show or do you know someone? And they would act. So I know the activity level is really high. So that's really what we care about on our social pages over time because they get a lot to manage. And then I don't care about my Twitter at all because I have to have a Twitter because Inc. requires it, but I only get trolled on Twitter. So every time I write an article about women, diversity, or anything like that, or AI, anytime I write about AI, and sometimes about blockchain, they all like harass me. And I have to get them shut down, and it's really fun. So I'm like, why would I post in that? So you know what I do? I put a bot on my site, so every time a podcast is posted, it just sends a tweet. And that's the extent of my Twitter. I'm alive, I'm posting, but I don't care. So you can do that. So you have an address, but you don't have to care about every single one of these channels. If it's not valuable to you, you don't want to be like, oh, I don't exist anymore, to someone who only cares about Twitter, right? But it's very obvious to them where you interact. And I have to, actually, it says it right in my Twitter description. If you really want to talk to me, go to LinkedIn or Facebook. So I'm pretty honest about it. Now we have auto email follow-up. This is the follow-up I talked about with our interview guests, but you want to also have that happening with whenever you post something, right? Because when you're in iTunes, it's really convenient because when a new podcast, if somebody subscribed to you and a new podcast is posted, or you're subscribed to a YouTube channel and a new video gets listed, they get pinged, right? They get notified. So if they're subscribed to you on your website, you've got to make sure that you're letting them know each week that you've got new content for them as well. So you do have to have this auto follow-up set up for yourself. That's important. And then most importantly, we want to syndicate everywhere. Today, our podcast, I think, didn't we just get iHeart all set up for everybody? It just came through this past week. Aaron, you're on iHeart. You may not, woohoo! Aaron's on iHeart. Spotify, Pandora's coming in a couple of months. Of course, TuneIn, which is the one that Alexa listens to. There's Google Podcasts, Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Those are the major ones, and then there's like a half a dozen smaller ones like FM Player and some other things like that. But what we find, and so we syndicate out to all those things from one piece of content. You never do anything. It just feeds out there because it's just a directory. Those places are directories. I don't know if you realize that, but iTunes doesn't download your podcast. It doesn't contain there. It's contained wherever you have your files hosted. And don't host them on your website. Eventually, the bigger the audience, you'll crash your site. So don't do that. And so anyway, so we want to do that because that's, why not? If that's where they are, we want to be where they are and when they are, right? And when they're searching. So we want to be there in the location where they care about. And it doesn't make us do more work. It's syndicated. So we definitely want to kind of want to accomplish all of those things. And those will help us do less work because we're still starting from that audio or video. And this is how we organically grow the center of influence. I chose for you, it's kind of a spiral. It's organic. This is why I chose this. So this is a nautilus shell. And it's also, for those of you who are sort of math geeks, it's like, what? It's the Fibonacci, right? There you go. It's the golden mean Fibonacci. So there's a reason for that. And I want you to kind of look at like each section right in through here, they're like cells, right? So imagine if Aaron's at the center of that. And this is Bill Kelly out here, right? Because he's got a bigger following, This might be me, who knows? But he's building up cell by cell his influence, and it's growing. But it's centering around him and all heading back into him by who he's gathering together, who he's inviting in. And you guys are all coming in through one of those cells because who interests you the most? And it might be Bill Kelly that interests you, and you come in through that. And so you come in through those things, and then you circle back in down to Aaron. So this is where our center of influence grows and grows and grows, but it's growing organically. It's growing on its own. And that's what we really have to remember is that we just started it spinning. We just started it moving. And we make progress each time we invite someone, we put out content, we're adding to it. But it has a little bit of a life of its own. So that's what I'm inviting you to look at is what I call organic growth. It can get you a lot more. So I get invited to conferences. I got to interview Steve Wozniak. Totally cool. I kind of geeked out about that. I got invited to a blockchain conference. I now have a blockchain podcast because of it, and it's partially Steve Wozniak's fault. And so, these things happen. I got invited. I didn't pay for the conference. I got to go because I'm an ink columnist. I got my ink column from the podcast. I have not put out a book yet. I'm not a best-selling author. I have no book yet. It's coming. But the other thing that I want to do is you want to free some time for some things, right? You want to make some time for other things that you want to do. And so I look at that as how have I managed to free up my time to do more of those things. So one of those things that I wanted to do was have more time to network with my community and grow my alliance base to be stronger. So if I am inviting them in to come to me and say, let's have an interview this week, I've got an hour set aside where I am doing that, but it's not just me spending time on the phone, connecting with people or whatever that is. I'm delivering value to them in terms of publicity. I'm building my content at the same time, and I'm networking. So I've given myself a very powerful hour that I'm operating under. So these are some of the things you want to do. The other thing is that I think do not underestimate the power. I have never had to pitch a speaking engagement except for in a new area. I just did my first speech internationally in Hong Kong, and I was paid to speak there. And I got that because someone invited me because I interviewed him on a podcast. He invited me to speak at an event, and then someone else saw me there and invited me to speak in Hong Kong and paid me. So that's how it has always happened for me. I do not have to work that hard at it. And they're always the right audience, so I never worry when I go to speak somewhere, is this going to be worth my time? Because I already connected with this person and I know enough about them and I know enough about what they're doing to really be sure this is a good invitation for me. So that's how I look at it is, am I really using my time really well? And is it giving me actually what I want, which is serving my business at the end of the day? And all I have to do is do the thing that I really love to do best, which is just connect with people and serve, like give you back. And my whole business is built around that. So what I really want to do, and you guys can interrupt and ask tons of questions here if you want, but Aaron has mentioned, and both Michelle mentioned as well, we want models business models we can follow, plans we can utilize, blueprints, right? And I am the how-to girl. If you want to know how to do something, I've read about it, figured it out, and if I don't know, I will research it for you. So this is, what I want to know when I research things is not how one person does it. This is something my dad taught me early on. When you want to know about a culture, you read 10 books. You watch videos. This is how we learned how to podcast and how we learned that all the models that everyone else was teaching was BS. They were leaving out the most important things so you would not end up creating a good enough podcast to compete against them. And the most important factor they left out at that time, thank you. The most important factor they left out at that time was if you didn't podcast 5 days a week, you couldn't get high ranking on iTunes. Because think about it this way. If I put out a podcast and I launch with 25 shows in the can from day one, and you find me, how many shows did get downloaded on that day one? 25. Because you found me and it automatically would download all of them, unless your settings are set differently, and maybe 5 would be the max. Just depends on each person. But for the most part, you'll get 25 shows all at once because they're brand new. No one's ever seen them before. And so if somebody else launched a podcast and they only launched one show, I beat them 25-1. I'm now outranking them. And if I do that consistently for 8 weeks, that you might get into new and notable, and I produce a show a day, I'm beating them out all the time. That's what they didn't tell you. Now, that's a lot of work. What they also didn't tell you is that new and notable is not worth anything. We never made it. Who would put a show at 3D printing on the new and notable list? Nobody. And what we really didn't tell you was that while numbers matter, there's a person in control of it at the end of the day. So if they don't like your show, it won't make it. So it's kind of like the New York Times bestseller list. It's a little snotty. And so, this is what we discovered. They weren't telling you these things. So what I try to look for is models that work again and again across an industry niche or across a type of thing you want to accomplish, whether it's selling a course. So that's what I pulled for you, some of the best examples that I've seen. But I know that these models work because they're working again and again. And so Tom and I have we call it the hazard rules of hiring. It's when we hire experts. And we don't buy from someone who hasn't done it in our core category before. So because we learned this the hard way, trying to get products manufactured, and sometimes when they say, oh yeah, it's no problem, it's injection molded, it'll be fine, but they never made a pen before, they can actually screw it up and you can lose your entire inventory. So that's one of our rules. So they need to have been there, done that again and again. So these are models that work like that. So I mentioned 3D printing before, but you know what? This is the part that I want you guys to hear about this story. When we started this podcast, I think, what did our email list have? Maybe 100 people, and I think 90 of them were friends. We had no list because we were what you call ghost designers. You never saw us, you saw Martha Stewart. You never saw us, you saw Bayside Furnishings and at Costco. So you never saw us or our brand. You saw our clients. And what our clients share with you, and Martha Stewart's not going to admit she didn't design this office chair. Not going to happen. She's taking credit for it. She's not going to refer me either. So this is the dangerous part about being a ghost writer, ghost designer. It was bad. And so we said, in this new 3D print world where anyone can print anything, the person who designed it is going to be valuable. That means we need to put ourselves out there and start branding ourselves. So we not only needed something where we can find out if there was a viable market for it, but we needed one where it was going to give us a publicity and exposure at the same time. So that's what we did. So you can establish expertise that you don't have today. So many people do it. They're saying, look, I'm on an exploration. I'm going to explore. You guys heard of Bulletproof Coffee, right? Dave Asprey? Mm-hmm. Dave didn't invent Bulletproof Coffee. He was on a journey to get healthy. And he brought people along with him. Now, they started in a blog, and then he turned into a podcast. And along the way, he hit into this Bulletproof Coffee model, and it's what really took off, and it makes him a ton of money. So he was there not as an expert in health and wellness from the beginning. He became a biohacker over time. So that's something you can do. So if you've got a new area you're exploring, that's okay. But if you also have an area which you are an absolute expert in, we have a guy who's expert in deer hunting with bows.
Specifically white-tailed deer
it's a pretty decent thing because he just went to a conference and got like 70 interviews in 1 week or something crazy like that. So it's a big thing, yeah. But this is the interesting part because remember Aaron was talking about know, like, and trust, right? That he and I built this higher trust level because I felt like I already knew him. But here's the thing. When you're new to something or when you're in an area and no one's really ever heard of you except your little local hunting community, and that's where what's his name? Bruce was at the time that he built Whitetail Rendezvous. It was like, yeah, all his buddies in the local neighborhood, everybody knew him in town, right? But they didn't know him outside of that. So how was he going to get that and be able to leverage this great knowledge that he has? So he's truly an expert in it. And so he said, well, I've got to go to some place people trust. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't trust YouTube that much. But I trust iTunes pretty well. I trust Amazon books pretty well because I know how to like look at whether or not that's really a bestseller, it's worth reading or not. But that's because I'm an avid reader. So everyone has their own trusted source. And we learned this really early on in our shopping business, right? Creating a direct sales model is a whole lot more expensive. You've got to drive people to a website they've never been to. And while it's a lot easier today, back when we first did it in 1998 and built a website, people were afraid to put their credit card in, right? So where can I go that I already trust? So if they trust iTunes, if they trust YouTube, if they trust some other place for these listings, they don't know that iTunes doesn't care and lets everybody be listed. They don't really know that. They said, oh, it's on iTunes, it must be good. It's on Amazon, it must be a real product, it must be okay, and there's no bad reviews. Right? That's how they do it. So we go to some place we trust first. So we're reversing this. So instead of know, like, and trust, we start from a place of trust when we don't know anything about a market or when we're out there searching for something new. And then we move to, well, we consume a bunch of your content. We read your book, we watch your videos, we listen to your podcasts, and we start to like you. That was the case with Aaron. I started to like his stories. I liked the goat stories. I don't know about you, I don't have any experience with goats, but I was like, that's kind of cute and sweet, and I like it. And so, yeah, right? And so then after that, I was like, I kind of want to know this guy. And there he appeared in front of me. And I was like, now I have an opportunity to not only know him, but have him be my mentor. Wouldn't that be cool? So that is where we then start taking action and we seek out. And those are the people you want, right? You just qualified them without doing anything extra. That's what we want. So we want to move from trust to like to know. In the case of Whitetail Rendezvous, he's doing something really interesting. So he's had his podcast for a while, but now that he's gotten so much publicity, he's starting to interview the people who make bows and the people who make hunting gear and the people who make all of these things. And he's inviting them to not only be on his show, but sponsor them, resell their products. And he's now a consolidated expert, and he's about to teach a course on whitetail hunting. Cool, right? He's the center of influence. He's grown that for himself, and now he's going to monetize it, essentially. So he's taking that no factor to the next level. This is my good friend, John Livesey. He has the Successful Pitch podcast. It's a podcast, a little bit different twist to it. That's why I want to present this one model to you. So he teaches people how to pitch to investors, like how to tell a story while you're up there pitching, and he's really great at it. And he's taught, Coca-Cola and big architecture firms taught their sales team how to switch their model of selling to being story-based. So he's really good at this, and his podcast has gotten him all those opportunities. But he wanted to be a best-selling author because he wanted to amp up his speaking career and get paid to go all over the world. And so he was like, well, what do I write about? Well, the more he did his show, the show was an interesting configuration because you'd think, oh, well, he wants startups to listen to him. So what value can he bring to startups? Let me interview investors and find out what they want to hear. Now all the startups want to hear it. Now they're also afraid that they don't know how to do it, so now they hire him. But now he has these great investor stories. They would make a great book. And so this is, his newest book is coming out in a couple of weeks, I think. I just saw the die lines of it. Getting to Yes, how to go from invisible to irresistible with your ideal clients. He's taken it, his first book was about having a successful pitch, and it was about all these investor stories. But this is still taking those same stories, or different ones of them, but he's now taking it and applying it across different industries. So it's not just startups pitching to investors, it's you pitching to your clients. And so he's gone further with this. But in it, he has kind of summary chapters, and then he has his stories. He has actually re-edited transcriptions, so they're not so rough, but they're the really heart of the interviews that he does. This is what I did. So I told you I wrote a column for almost 4 years. I'm on my 4th year of writing my column, 6 a month. That's a lot of articles. Each one has an interview. Some of them are amazing, like Wozniak. I've got Kevin Harrington, and I've got a whole bunch of people that product launchers care about, inventors and product launchers care about. And this is not the cover, but this is the only image I could find of the cover. This is the ugly cover that we rejected. And so I decided, well, why don't I use these articles? Because now I have an ego bait book. Because everyone whose article I put in this book is likely to buy a copy, if not a few more, right? So we have a 7-step product launching process. Prove it, plan it, price it, like there's a whole bunch of things. So I did a summary podcast in Product Launch Hazards for each one of those 7 steps. You can listen to them if you're interested in it, the 7 Ps I call them. And I used them as my opening chapter, and then I picked 6 stories. And then I picked 1 or 2 of interviews that were really powerful. I chose Brian Smith of Uggs because you can't get a better story of how hard it is to keep a business running year after year and grow a billion-dollar brand. And I brought out the excerpts from that actual interview that never made it into the article. So there's like bonus content as well. So that's my book. I actually finished the whole structure of it, and it's in final edit, but I finished the whole structure of it in 6 weeks because it was already, all the content was already there. So you can do the same thing. You can plan it, or you can just mine it later, which is what John Livesey did and what I did. You can build what people want. This is the thing. A lot of you build these courses, write these books, do these things, and you really don't know if people want to buy it, right? It's our cat stories, right? As Aaron referred to yesterday. Like, we really don't know if it. But what if I floated a podcast out about it, and people are like, wow, this was great. I really want to hear more of this. So I did this in December. I put out a year-end content strategy live stream. It's a 3-part live stream that I did, a 3-part webinar, if you want to call it that as well. And we're now taking that and turning it into a mini course. Am I going to sell the course? No, I'm going to give it away for free because for me, that's the value and that's what we do. But it's still a lead generator, right? Because anytime anyone downloads that, they're giving me their email address. So it still works for us whether you do it free or paid. But I created a course that I know was valuable because at Christmas time, I ended up with 400 people each week watching it either live or on replay. Valuable, right? And the email open rate was up over 40% at the holidays. So I now also know that my list is really good if I've got the right content for them. So I've tested that, and I'm sure of that. So this is what we want to use our podcast to test this out. I don't have a lot of statistics on other people's courses, but I think we have about 10 or 15 podcasts somewhere in there that are selling a course from their podcast. Unfortunately, because Aaron threw this at me on Thursday, I didn't have quite the stats that I would love to bring you somebody new. But you guys know that guy in the middle? Yeah. Scott Carson. So Scott Carson became our client because of Magnify Your Wealth event. He finally sat down and he's like, I know I want to do this. And so how long has he been doing it now? Year and 5 months?
18 months.
18 months. 18 months. He has 4 different shows now. So he does something really interesting, which is a really great model that I recommend to people. So when he does a whole webinar weekend or he does a boot camp, he'll take all of the content of that, put it into his regular Note Closers show, and then so that all the existing subscribers watch it, listen to it, have it, and then he spins it off into its own little entity. So now we have Note Camp Season 1, Note Night in America, which is every Monday night, I think. And so he has, he found there was value in it, and then now he spun them off into their own little thing. So if you're an advanced note closer, you don't have to listen to the residual 101 stuff that comes up and the things that he reiterates. You go straight into Note Night in America where he's going to be talking about the more advanced stuff. So these are things where you can sort of, once you have a large enough audience, you can sort of sub-list it. And so that's one of the things that I really like that he did. But also, one of the things is Scott had a really powerful list. He had like 200,000 people on his email list before. He was already doing a great job of marketing. But what he was starting to see was a decline in an attrition rate over it, because the only emails he was sending out were kind of like, oh, here's the next Note Night in America, or here's the next course in the next boost camp. So almost every email was push marketing. It was ads, right? So he instead put it out into video. So he got 250,000. That was just in a year. This is a year statistics, right? So we probably have another 6 months. So this videocast has been listened to or watched for just under 250,000 times. It doubled his audience in 10 months. But the most important part is now the attrition rate on his listenership wasn't at 10% anymore. So his list was actually growing by more. So it had value to him, and it had direct conversion into bodies, into seats at his events, whether they're virtual seats or not. Tom, what's his show at right now? He just did 400 shows, right?
Yeah, he did 400 episodes, and his entire reach for the entire time of his show has now been over 500,000, in terms of actual plays of either podcast, video, or all the different ways that he puts out his content.
Right. Right, so really powerful. So he keeps doing more. Like I'm like, Scott, really more? But he's finding it so valuable for him. Dr. Diana Hamilton, she has a good radio show, Capturing Traffic. Tom, tell me, because I don't have the stats. You have the stats on her. So what I think was really interesting is she had the show already, and she took all those old episodes, brought them to her site, syndicated them, and made blog posts from them.
Well, yeah, she had a radio show start. She didn't have a podcast. She was doing
Blog Talk Radio.
3 days a week radio, internet radio, broadcast. And the interesting thing is the radio network was getting all the benefit from her. Because it's on their platform. It was, they were getting the authority value from it. She wasn't getting enough of it out of it. So we started syndicating every episode as a podcast and converted it to blogs for her site. And then we took the 200 previously published episodes she had already aired, converted those into blogs, and then truly made her a center of influence. Her website went from ranking on about 250 organic keywords in Google search to ranking on over 10,000 in 4 months, and went from having about 350 unique visitors to her website a month to over 20,000, what it still is today, just as a result of converting that radio show content to things that had value and were bringing people to her website.
Yeah, so what I want you to hear about that is that, the thing about Blog Talk Radio, even terrestrial radio? Yep. Did I say that right? Even on terrestrial radio, the problem is that the radio station has tons of different shows. So actually to find her show, you have to go to the radio station's website, kind of figure out where her show is, and then of course you've got all their dumb ads in there that you've got to listen to that are not relevant to you. And so when you draw them back to your site, now her true fans want to come here because they want to find her show. Yeah.
So in that example, the shows are not the property of the radio station. You were permitted.
That's a really good point, right? So there are many, if you are not paying to be on Blog Talk Radio, chances are very good you do not have rights to your content. So now there is a loophole we found in a few contracts where you have right to the words that were said, but you can't use the audio recording. So we can still blog it.
Make sure you know what your contract is.
Yes,
it is. There's a lot of people with internet radio contracts that do own their content, and there are a lot that don't. You just have to know which you're at. And,
yeah. But the other point that we want to really make is whether you've done 100 videos, 200 radio shows, whatever you've done, that content is brand new to Google and to your site, and it's valuable. And you already did it, so why not reuse it? So that's really one of the things. She found instant value to that. And why waste that? Because what we do have to remember is that while it may be old to us, we've moved on and we're talking about something new, to someone who's newly discovering. So here's what I want to point you out, guys. Do you see this? Right? I am recording exactly what I'm saying here. This isn't a microphone that's projecting to you guys because you guys told me I had to talk louder. This is recording this for me so I can use this content on my website because it's really valuable. But I'm also going to do you guys a favor. I'm going to have it synced up with the SlideShare and make sure that Aaron and Megan can bring it to you so you have this as a reference. So now I've served you as well and given you more follow-up content. So if this is going like too much information for you right now to deal with, Peggy, in 3 months when you're feeling great, you're going to have it to be able to refer to again. So that's where you really do not miss out on capturing your content wherever it is, because you never know what valuable stuff is going to come from somewhere where they couldn't go to, they couldn't see it, they couldn't hear it. Now, I probably won't air it as a podcast, but I'll certainly put it on my site for you guys. So it just depends on how that goes. So this is the most useful podcast ever. This is Popular Mechanics. We have quite a few magazine shows, Esquire, O Magazine Book Club. Who else do we have on there? Coca-Cola. There's a couple of corporations and publications. And the reason why, how they're using a podcast is kind of interesting. So this is happening to a couple of PR firms, and we're working on some strategies with them for utilizing it in the same model of business. But let's say I need to move out of my business day to day, and I need to brand my team. So we can use the same model that Popular Mechanics is using by having each one of the editors for the different sections of their magazine come together and do is it segmented? It's segmented?
They each host a short segment, and all 6 get cut together, 6 or 7 for every episode, to make a 45-minute show. So each editor really only needs to record, I think they record more than we use, like 10 or 15 minutes each, and then we cut it down.
So a lot less work for your team. They do 10 to 15 minutes each, but it's on each section. And now all those editors are being branded. So it's not about, so Popular Mechanics is now personalizing their broad company. And you can do it the other way. If like you're the head of a PR firm and everybody just wants you, it becomes hard to separate yourself. Hard to separate yourself as a doctor. But if you've got really great other doctors working in your practice and you want to make sure people get to know them, this might be a strategy to do that. So I stepped away. I'm starting to step away completely from my design business. Started last year. We only took 6 projects last year, even though I was still speaking everywhere. But I'm still speaking everywhere, and I was like, what am I going to do with the value? Because I had already committed to it before we decided that we were going to step away from that business and concentrate completely on Brandcasters. So what was I going to do with that? So what I did was I invited 20 of my referral partners in to each record 1 episode a month, and they only have to record for 30 minutes. And then I still do 4 episodes a month, so I do 4 interviews of various people out in the industry that I think are interesting people I meet. I interviewed Nadia. You can hear her show on Product Launch Hazards. And so I bring 4 interesting people into the mix, and that's my ad for the month. So we do 24 episodes a month, pretty much. And some months the experts are not so good at recording, so maybe we get 15 in. Still a lot of content. But each expert in each genre has their information in. We have lawyers who talk about intellectual property, and we have Amazon experts who talk about listings or talk about product management. And so every one of those are now becoming a lot easier. That over the course of the year I set it up so now people are starting to refer themselves to the experts without even going through me. So I've managed to build this team. So now this year we're doing something different in which we're treating it like collaborative marketing. Every expert who's decided to keep going and participate into this year is contributing $500 toward an ad budget. That's pretty cheap, right? But we're pulling it together, and it's going to be somewhere between $5,000 and $7,500 in ad spend, so we can attract the right audience into our podcast listenership, our videos, and all of that. And now we've got leads generating for everyone, going through a qualifier quiz, and getting direct referred out to where the areas of expertise they need it. Those people will get an automatic email. Those experts will get an automatic email saying, hey, they expressed interest that they're having difficulty and they're looking for intellectual property. They might be looking to form a corporation or an LLC, and I'll send them to Aaron. Like, all of those things will just naturally happen from the form itself. So we don't do any referral work anymore. And the only people that I take in are requests for speaking engagements or other things, which I will be turning down most of them this year, but that's a choice, right? So these are models you can use to help move out of the day-to-day of your business, brand your teams, and move forward into making sure that you're building a company. Growing subscribers. This is something that Raj Jana is actually one of our clients on the product side of the business, but he started a podcast after he had pretty much gotten a really decent sized sales base already. He does these grinders for people who are zen about their coffee. They care about the quality of the beans. They care about how they grind them. They grind them manually. They don't use machines because that would be just not okay. And doing all of that. And so he has this Stay Grounded podcast. And the really interesting way that he uses it to sell subscription coffee. And each month there's a different coffee that's coming from a different farm around the world. And they talk to the grower and they get the grower's story. So now not only are you in the subscription plan and maybe you go month to month, or you just join in because you care about Peruvian coffee and that sounded cool, you stay because these stories, and you know the source, you're hearing from them directly, and when you receive that subscription box in the mail, you know everything about it. It's been working really well for him, and it's been really growing and still growing, boosting the sales of the product, which has been nothing but have trolls on their listing, knockoff products. They've had a lot of trouble with it. What we invented in it is inside of it, not on the outside, so it's really hard to see it. It makes it a better grind, but it's hard to see it on the outside, so all of them look the same, even though his is quality better. And so we have a new design. He just hasn't launched it yet because he's been dealing with a lot. But that's how he's using his podcast. So he's really using it to nurture and grow the subscription base, which is growing more direct sales of his products at the end of the day.
Do you have the stats on where he started?
I don't because I haven't talked to him really recently, but I know we can get it. So he used to sell like.
He was doing about $2 million a year on Amazon just selling the grinder.
Just the grinder.
Before he started the coffee subscription, which he started about a year ago.
And I know that when I talked to him about 10 months ago, he'd done about 1 million in subscriptions, is what he had told me then. So he was doing pretty well for what it was. He was selling out every single month in the amount he was bringing in.
He would do even better if he had started with a grinder that was truly his own design and proprietary, because he bought a grinder that was
other people could buy.
Open line grinder and just put his logo on it. And so when he had success on Amazon, anybody can see that you're succeeding on Amazon, and it was like, oh, I want a piece of that market. So you get all those other people trying.
We call it trolling your listing.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's why it was very smart for him to do the subscription coffee.
Right, because that's totally unique. But as far as profitability, I don't know. A lot of these Amazon sellers are lucky if they have 1% to 10% profitability on it. And I would suspect in the startup year, it's probably not that profitable. It will grow to be, but it's not yet.
How many followers do you guys?
Oh, I haven't checked it. So, he already had interesting because of how he marketed, and he did such a good job with branding. He had over a 200,000 person list before he started the podcast. So I suspect he's at least tripled it, because that's usually what happens.
In 10 months.
Yeah. But also he was on Damon John's podcast. He was on his show as a video cast as well. So I got a Damon John boost. So this is Dr. Pekka. We met Dr. Pekka here in San Clemente, and I'm in Rancho Santa Margarita. He was an intern. And he was doing something really interesting. He was buying out a chiropractic practice in a very specific area. This is Blair Chiropractic, if you have not heard of it. It's very specific. But he was interning out here with our chiropractor, Dr. Liz Hafer, who has a show called Is Your Head On Straight? Which is a cool name for a show. And she's lots of fun. Dr. Pekka was really worried about how he's going to join this practice, buy this practice out in New Jersey for a retiring chiropractor, and he was worried about how is he going to get touch base, how is he going to make sure that he keeps all the patients that are there, and yet still feels a patient load because he's got all these student loans and the loans from buying the practice. That's a heavy load. And so we were starting up Liz Hafer's podcast at that time, and he was listening in because he was in the office as we treat the entire family, by the way. So all of us are in being treated, and so it would take an hour with all the kids and everything. And he was listening in on this. And so finally he said to us, do you think that starting a podcast for me before I buy this practice or before I come into my first day of practice is a good idea. And we said, well, you've got some time on your hands when you get back to Jersey before you actually assume the practice. Yeah, let's see what we can do with you. And we were not 100% confident it was going to work localized, but we were confident that he would be good at it and that it would be a decent show. So that we were confident about. So we worked with him on it, and he launched right before his practice opened, I think like a week or two before. So we had some there. So when new patients would come in and they'd say, hello, hey, yeah, oh, so this is Dr. Kevin Pekka, he's taking over my practice, you know, he would be able to say, yeah, you can find out more about my story and about me at Expect Miracles podcast. And it's on his website, which would be the new website that was taking over. And so that would go out in mailings all the time. And so he was getting the ability to connect with patients even though they hadn't come in the office yet. Or they had come in, but they were still being treated by the doctor retiring. And so it helped him. And then he would have patients who would come in and they do this like x-ray thing, and it's kind of the first consult, and it's kind of pricey and everything, and they would be like, well, I don't know, that seems like a lot of money, and you know, and he would say, you know, you really are, you had a hockey injury, or you're looking to improve your golf game, why don't you listen to episode number 7 and check this one out? And invariably they would go, they would listen to the podcast, and then they would call back and sign up for the appointment. So it built tremendous amount of trust, like and no factor, right, for him. And then the other thing that we found that we didn't know was going to work out really well for him, the whole blog post and all those things. Remember how I talked about relevance before, right? Relevance also applies to local proximity. So if I'm looking for a chiropractor, but I don't type in San Diego, it's going to serve me up Orange County because that's where I live and that's my proximity setting. So it's going to assume I want one when I get home. And so if you live in New Jersey, it's just automatically going to assume New Jersey. So when anyone was typing in information about chiropractic or about things that they might want to learn about, they were getting served up his content because they were in the local proximity. So he was outranking all the other local doctors who'd been there longer because his content was new and his content was valuable. So this is just one way that some of our professionals use it, and it works in a whole lot better way. But does he care about his numbers? No. He cares about the patients at the end of the day. He doesn't care about how many listeners he has. And he does it on his day off. Like, and he spends 1 hour on his day off, and he records. And usually he's connecting with a patient, connecting with a fellow chiropractor. You know, he's having a good time. It's fun for him. Yeah.
So I was just thinking, like, if you're building out a brand, and there's a trade show for your industry, could you? And I think that doesn't answer this, but is it valuable? How valuable would it be to like go there with your selfie stick and interview like vendors at that trade show, and then have those videos transcribed, and then like post one of those on your blog? Do one video with the transcription, like do one a week.
It's very valuable. It's very, very valuable. So we do that very frequently. It's very easy to do. The sound is an issue, so you have to get a right kind of microphone and try and like locate yourself in a space, because on trade show floors it can be really noisy. So if you can locate yourself out in the hallway or do something else. That's exactly how I did, I don't know, 25 interviews at the conference in which I got to interview Steve Wozniak. Now luckily he was backstage, so the sound's really good back there. But the others, sometimes they were good and sometimes they weren't. Sometimes people would be walking by while you're recording. So you just have to be aware of it, that your audience has to be kind of not too sensitive to that. And for the most part, they're pretty forgiving. And for our team, when we edit shows, we work really hard to make the sound as good as it can be. There's only a limit to so much you can do. So test it out, make sure you got a good mic. Do the handheld, it's a lot more directed, yeah. You know, I have these and there's a second one, but the reality is that the sound's okay. It's not great, but it works better than all the extra equipment for me. So, you know, but Tom and I have invented a new microphone that comes out later this month that actually has a recording feature in it, so you can actually use it and record directly into it. And no cords. So, yeah, we're working on that one. Yeah.
One thing I'd like to point out, that situation of recording people at an event like that, even if the audio quality isn't the best, the blog content you create from that would be actually a whole lot more valuable. And then people can, when they find it in a Google search, they can listen if they want to, or they can read it. So I would think it of value even if the audio quality wasn't.
Yeah, they're pretty forgiving about the videos because like those are like, oh, look, it's a video. I mean, most of us kind of watch videos with the sound like, you know, that we're barely hearing anyway. So it can be really forgiving in that world as well. So those were some of the models. If you have a model you haven't heard here that you're interested, please come talk to us. Tom and I mean, we have 150 podcasters on our platform. So one of the things we didn't mention to you guys, and I'm not here to sell you anything. Like this is not why I'm here. But I want to make sure that you know that we have this because I've been accused of failing to tell you that we've got this for you and we got you covered. So our system is a done-for-you system. All you do is record, and we do everything else, including that blog post and putting it on your website for you. So that's there for you. You don't have to learn this tech. Please don't be overwhelmed by it. It's done in 7 days. It's all taken care of you. Our team we have 40 employees worldwide, deep knowledge in SEO, deep knowledge in web and handling your websites. All of that can be taken care of you. And if you don't even have a website and you need to start from my hypothesis, talk to us as well. So we do 2-week websites. I say that because so many people spend way too much money and months later they just get nothing for it. We try to remove that for our team, for our clients. But the other thing that we have is measurements and metrics. So we host our podcast for most of our podcasters. If they want to stay on Libsyn or SoundCloud or wherever they are, they can. But we have a lot more value, and we built in a hosting platform that has both website, because that's what matters, website metrics, and your podcast metrics side by side. So you can see the organic growth of your website at the same time you're seeing your listenership. So there's a whole reporting structure, there's a whole bunch of that built into our site as well. But we went one step further because remember when I told you our podcast had 25,000 listeners back after it had like 4.5 months or something like that? Well, what happened from there is that somebody came to us and said, hey, we're MakerBot. We're the largest printer manufacturer in the US, and we'd really like to advertise on your show. We hear this podcast advertising thing could be good. And we said, oh, okay. It took us a few months to negotiate. We put in an advertisement. And as we're putting in the advertisement, I said, wow, we have all these listeners per month, but remember I had 100 episodes. The listeners are listening to all different episodes, not the most recent one. So what we're giving them was, at that time, something like 1,200 to 1,500 listens per show, and we only put them in 4 shows for the month. And so I was like, that's not a lot of listens. It's not a lot of value to them. That seems kind of wasted. Why can't we put this across all our shows? And the answer came back, well, because that's a lot of editing to put an ad into all the shows. And I said, well, that's not acceptable, because what if I have a Christmas ad and I want to take it out? I don't want to be people having to listen to it in July. And so we started thinking about ways in which, and I challenged the team, and Tom and the team came up with a way in which we can ad mix across our entire catalog, and then a day later, a month later, take it out. So you can sell now your ads on a monthly basis, but more importantly, you can promo for your book launch, the courses, the price you have today, and if you change the name, the URL, anything tomorrow, it's gone. So only do this one thing if you're going to do it, and that is to make sure to send people back to your main website, no subpages, none of those things. If you're going to do them in an ad only so you can remove them later. Okay? And we really want people to only remember one thing. We want them to remember your website anyway. That's the best practice. So when I invite people on my show, I don't let them tell them their URL. I tell them to go to the blog post at Product Launch Hazards or feedyourbrand.co, like any one of those places, and go to the blog post. Remember, you're doing them a favor. They're driving, they're jogging at the gym. You don't want them hurting themselves, right? We're trying to remember this. So here are the key measurements we want to track. This is the order of value to you as well as you grow your show. I put this here for you. Numbers, girls, over there. Organic web traffic. How many unique visitors am I getting to my site a month? And is that growing? And we want it to be growing. It's not, we want it to grow faster, of course. Faster might mean I have to do more episodes, though. So keep that in mind. You'll find a pace, and as long as it's consistently growing, you're doing something right. Organic keywords. I don't want to just rank on wealth building, right? How many people are building wealth? That'd be like way too many people to be competing against. I want to do wealth building in real estate. I want to do passive income wealth building. I want all of the terms that might be valuable to me to come through and become my organic keywords, right? Get served to me. Now, the great thing about speaking 6,000 words is that while you may think your main keyword is all about wealth building and real estate, I'm going to say it multiple ways, and all of those sub-words and sub-key phrases are going to come through as well, and you're going to get value for them. I want engagement. I want people to find me on social media and message me and say, I really love your podcast. I want them to message me on Facebook. I want them to send me emails on my website, make comments. All of those things, I want the engagement to start growing. I'm going to tell you when you launch your show, if you launch it for the first time, no one will talk to you for about 25 episodes. There's somewhat of a phenomena where they're not sure if they like you yet till they consume enough. When you hit a tipping point of 100, that's when you find it more consistent, that they really communicate back with you. A qualified list growth. We want a qualified list growth. I don't care how big my list is. I care how active and loyal that list is. Remember, that's what we talked about, an active and loyal following. So I care that I have a qualified list at the end of the day because my list opens my emails. My list wants to hear from me, and that's what we care about at the end of the day. Views, listens, and stickiness, that's my term because, I don't know, reads, that's not really a word. But views, listens, and people reading my blogs, right? That's what I want at the end of the day. So stickiness, them sitting on my website is a value. Them watching my video adds value. It adds to your Google ranking. So that's a value. So having these long tail blog posts for those that are really readers and those that care, that's valuable to you. But more importantly, that those long tail blog posts are there for Google and they care about that. So growing your center of influence. Any questions that you guys have? How about you want to become bingeable? It's pretty cool when people say that to you, right? Here's more. So if you want to find out more about podcasting and marketing via video casting, podcasting, feed your brand. Feedyourbrand.co is the podcast website. Podetize.com/inquiry. That's where you can get Tom if you want to talk to him more. But how about some questions? Anything? Yeah.
So when you do the transcription of the podcast or wherever you record it, do you use a person to do the transcription?
Yes.
Or a machine?
Don't Yeah, so the question is when we do our transcription, do we use a human or a machine? And we do both, but that's only because we can do both, because for us, we have a 40-person team and it's labor intensive, so we use the machine as the first round just to get it out. But if you're gonna have it done yourself and it's only you who's doing the work, pay the extra small amount of money to have the human transcription done, because the machine one is crap a lot of times. Like,
the reality is it only gets you about 75%
Yeah.
of the way, and you have to correct it
Right.
if you want it to be accurate, and that takes a person listening to the whole episode to do that.
right. And you'll still only get about 85 to 90% of the way with the human transcription from a service agency, because they don't know your marketplace and they don't know your keywords and they don't know what matters to you. So we have a SKU is a common terminology, SKU, stock keeping unit, but it always comes out SKEW. So like they don't know your industry and they're gonna make that mistake again and again and again. And especially if you've got technical terms or medical terms or any of those things, there's no way for them to be mind readers. They won't look it up. Our team will look it up. So our team does a triple transcription process. So the machine does the first, and then we have multiple transcribers who look words up, put links in, does all of those things. Still, there's probably about 2% only you know, especially when you have a new show. So you still have to review this stuff, especially if your interview subject is very important. You want to take a look at the post and make sure that they didn't say something stupid, because it happens. Our team will only put down what you actually said, and if you said it backwards, even though you meant it correctly, they can't fix that. They're not mind readers. They don't know that that's wrong. So you have to still read through it and take a look at it. But for the most part, I have to tell you, like, I'm a writer and I should care about it, but I'm busy and I don't care. And Nadia calls and says, hey, there's a little mistake here. Fixed. Like,
Important
Right, it was an important one, and you pointed it out, but I don't think I would have caught that mistake because it was something about pH, so I was like, I don't know that stuff.
pH is bad. I'm like, what? pH is important.
pH is important, but we said it. We actually said it that way. We said it wrong on the show, and when you say something but you kind of correct yourself, but when you see it in written word, it doesn't always look right. Like, because it's the pause that mattered, and then you reiterated it, so it says it, and then a correction that comes after, but we didn't negate the first part of it. So these are reasons you have to review. What else? What else you got for me?
Can I jump in with you for
Yeah.
a minute?
Yes.
Okay.
Did I go too long for you?
No, you're
Okay.
great. You're great. First of all, let's give her a round of applause. Okay? So this is great. I'm going to stand here so I'm not in your light, and
Yep.
we're together. So this is, how many of you are doing a podcast or a blog right now? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Kind of over there.
Kind of. Okay, yeah, well, he raised his hand up.
You're with him. Got it.
Yeah, they're both from Torrance. No, that was a joke from yesterday. If you're not doing something like this, you don't have to do it, and maybe in your world it doesn't matter.
Right.
Like we've been talking about what would be a good podcast for Laughlin Associates. We've been thinking, how can we elevate Laughlin in a way, because right now most people, if they're not meeting us somewhere, they don't know who we are. But if you say LegalZoom, pretty much everybody knows who that is, because they've done a huge amount of marketing. So the question was, what could we do that would be interesting for a Laughlin podcast? The reason is, it doesn't matter that we're 47 years old, that we've had hundreds of thousands of clients, we have a big client base now, that we're active out there, that we do a lot of speaking, because really only a tiny amount of people are at the places where we are, right? Compared to everybody out there that owns a business. So then the question is, well, if somebody's curious, the thing that I love about podcasts is that, because somebody asked me the other day, well, I don't know anything about podcasts, and I would never listen to a podcast. What is a podcast, right? They're dismissing it out of hand, and they said, I read the New York Times. That's where I get my news. And I thought, well, here's the deal. When I was a kid, I'm 54, so anybody that's anywhere close to my age will understand this. We had 5 channels on TV, right? ABC, CBS,
You had 3.
NBC. We had public television, and we had the local channel, right?
Yeah.
Unless you went to UHF, yeah, and you wanted to dial it in and watch Japanese cartoons. But really, television was 5 channels. Radio was, I'm right at that area where I kind of remember FM being new. Almost all the big stations were AM stations. And so you just got what you got. You know, we got excited for the TV guide to come out because we were going to know what all the fall lineup was. Because they're
on
telling
the 5
us,
channels.
you only get these, this is what you get. You know, now, of course, today we go on to Netflix or go to Amazon Prime or something, and just it's endless choices. Well, it's the same thing, you know, for years we had the nightly news, we had the local news. You know, eventually we had cable infotainment news. And I mean that totally seriously. Cable news is, I don't care who you love, it's money making. The ABC, CBS, and NBC, whether or not you like them, are part of the original FCC rules that said there had to be something that wasn't driven by money to make the news. And whether or not it's really true that way, but the point is we have all this goofy stuff we get now. But we had endless stuff. So then it got even deeper, like YouTube came out. And all of a sudden you can get a video on anything.
Yeah.
Anything you want to know, you can find it. Well, that's what podcasts are too, right? You can get incredibly niche-y information about exactly what you want to hear. And the more, if you can be even sort of interesting, you don't have to be great.
We call it edutaining. That's my term that I keep using on it.
Edutainment or
edutaining, right? You want to educate, and you want to be entertaining enough that people aren't going, oh my God, I'm falling asleep listening to this person, right? So, you know, energy, passion about it works enough. Like, you don't have to be the most well-spoken person.
But if you're doing something that's a little bit, you've got a little interesting spin, or you're doing something that's incredibly common and you need to stand out, being the go-to individual that people look for. You know, if you're a local dentist and all you want to do is get more people in your chairs in your local dentist office, maybe a podcast isn't the best thing.
It may not be, right?
Maybe you want to be doing targeted Google and, you know, ads, right? But if you want to be a dentist that is getting invited to come do some lecturing, teaching other dentists how to do stuff, you're trying to figure out, how do I open a second or third location? How do I stand out as an authority? Then all of a sudden you could get on and do a podcast, and because the fact that you're doing it and nobody else is, you're now the expert. And if you just don't say a lot of wrong things that the other dentists will hear and go, the guy might have a good podcast, you know, but he or she's a
He doesn't
quack.
know what he knows.
I don't want to work with them because they don't know what they're doing. It's a good thing they're on podcast, not in somebody's mouth. But the point is, you can quickly lift yourself up above the crowd. The reason I wanted Tracy to talk about this was because they can drop names like, you know, the most useful podcast.
Popular Mechanics.
Popular Mechanics. And who else did you say? You said like O.
Yeah, O Magazine's Book Club, Esquire.
Esquire. So these are big brands, right?
We just actually closed Alex Mendoza.
You got Alex Mendoza. Okay, good. So you've got these people that are doing stuff, but to the big world, people don't really know me.
Right, and
You know?
and I would say 90% of our podcasters are like that.
Yeah, I mean Diane Hamilton, but she's been doing it for a long time. She's got a lot of people comes on. And she's
Yeah.
successful, and the difference is once somebody finds out, it's kind of like Tracy said. If I say, "Can I interview you for Inc?" You're going to say yes, right? You're going to say yes. When you bring people onto your podcast, not only are you elevating yourself because you have a show, but you also get to meet people that might be difficult for you to meet otherwise, because they'll come be a guest. And so you gave a ton of great, here's what we can do, and here's why these, you know, we do these things in this order. I don't know if everybody wants to get more press, get featured more, but I'll tell you, the more you are featured, the more likely you are to get the bigger jobs, get the relationships, get the invitations, get the speaking, get whatever, because people will check you out. Don't all of you guys, before you engage with something or some product, go quickly, do a quick Google search. What is this thing?
Yeah.
What is this? Do I care about this? I mean, beyond walking up and down the aisles of the grocery store.
So, but what we have to realize is how our next generation is also searching for it. So my girls will go, Alexa, what's this? So that's where it's coming to, and that's what's starting to happen in our homes and in other places. So we have to start thinking about where that next generation is coming up and coming to. It is not true that only millennials listen to podcasts. That is not true at all.
No.
Okay, so, but they are much more higher consumers of podcasts than they are of radio. So we have to think about that. So while our generation may still do radio and all of that as well as podcasts, they pretty much exclusively do it. It's kind of like they don't have cable.
I'm going to
Right.
ask you this question, and I hope we're not belaboring this, but I think this is very important. And if you're getting bored with this, I understand that maybe you are, but hopefully at least a couple of you will go, oh, I see why they're beating this drum so loudly. How many of you guys have Sirius XM that you're subscribed to in your automobile? Raise your hand real high. Okay, all right, so look around. Okay, so hands down. So then how many of you don't? Let's raise your hand for those that don't. Okay, so more than half the group doesn't do it. That really surprises me. That is a surprise to me, because I pretty much can't stand to listen to regular radio anymore.
Because it's too many.
listen to regular radio, but I don't have. I mean, I listen.
Okay,
They listen
all
to
right.
Audible. You're subscribed to Audible.
Oh, you guys are doing Audible and all this stuff. Okay.
You should ask how many people actually listen
How
to
many
radio.
people listen to AM/FM radio?
A couple.
Channel, like that's.
I liked how it went like this. First there was no hands. It was like, Well, I guess sometimes. Well, if I'm in a rental car. It's not that I never listen to it.
When I'm out of cell phone.
The point is that the reason Audible, right? Hundreds of thousands of books, or however many they've got, right? You can pick exactly what you want to listen to. Sirius XM, if I want to listen to only Elvis Presley, or only Frank Sinatra, or only...
The Billy Joel channel's back.
It's back for January.
I know.
Billy Joel. All I want to say about that is, why don't they just leave it on?
This is what I think.
It's on more than it's off. So, anyway, but I love Billy Joel. So I get to hear Billy Joel, and he gets to tell about how he wrote the songs, and he gets to talk about how
cool
people
stories.
influence. And you can do the same thing with Tom Petty or with Jimmy Buffett or whatever. You get exactly what you want. And then if you go to their app, you can narrow it down even more. I only want songs from this era. I only want songs from the 70s. I don't want his 80s stuff, right? So my point is, people are getting more and more, they're getting more and more used to curating only the things they want to hear. And so they're not looking for an outside third party voice of authority to tell them what is true and untrue. People want to make their own choices. So if you want to stand out, you have to be available. And one of the ways to be available is through blogging, podcasting, YouTube videos, Facebook Live videos. Now Facebook has this new thing about watch parties. Whatever. There are all these different things. I've been to several speaking for a while. I don't know, Michelle, how long did we do our Facebook Lives? For a year?
Yeah, over a year.
For about a year, we were really diligent about it, and then we just got busy and we said, let's not do it. But yet people would walk up to me at events and say, hi, I know you don't know me, but I really enjoy the Facebook Live you and your wife do. And I'm like, really? Like somebody was watching that thing?
But here, we all watched it, yeah.
But
It's because it's very fun to watch Michelle and Aaron interact, yeah, right? This is what many people do tell you. If you're considering doing a co-host, it's very, people like to watch it and see what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Like they're just waiting for Tom and I to
go
to battle over, disagreeing about 3D printing. Like they really were. Like there was an element of that was there. And they used to comment on it.
But anyway, these things, the reason I bring this up here, Inner Circle, well, one, these guys are part of my inner circle, right? They're the ones, we're not only friends, but they produce the show. And we've become much better friends because of all the work stuff and speaking stuff and shows. Our lives have become more entangled, more sticky.
Despite that, I agree wholeheartedly, and I love it.
Yeah.
It's a good relationship that we.
Oh, amen. Yeah. What's the truth?
Sticky.
It's a tremendous benefit to us, notwithstanding.
So there's one thing that I mentioned yesterday to someone at our table, and I really think I should say this one again for you guys, because maybe you aren't looking for doing a podcast or doing these kind of interviews or anything, but maybe you're looking for adding social proof to your site. So maybe you're looking to add a lot of testimonials. And I don't know about you, but isn't it hard to get testimonials? Yeah, incredibly hard. I hacked it. I hacked it in the last 3 months, and it works. So, Aaron, would you like to be interviewed by Laura Hazard, who's my research assistant? She's going to do a quick interview and talk to you about your show, about why you podcast, and what your show's all about. So we're going to give you publicity for your show. Does that sound like good?
I would love that.
Okay, it's going to take 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then you get on, and he books his time. 30 minutes, 20 minutes of it is all about Aaron. At the end of the 20 minutes, Laura says, Aaron, do you mind if I just ask you a few market research questions to help Tom and Tracy improve their company?
Sure. What's up?
Okay, so we have a few market research questions about our services and about things that we're thinking about. Would that be of interest and that kind of thing? And he'll say yes, no, whatever. And a couple of them might be perfectly planted to say, hey, you know, Aaron's not doing web development services and we now have this monthly maintenance service. Would he be interested in it? So we might ask if he heard about it. Well, now he says, no, I haven't heard about it, but I really like to hear about it. Can you have somebody contact me? So she makes a note, sales will call him. The other part of it, though, is to say at the end, what do you really think about podetized service, the podetized platform and the Brandcaster services? And Aaron will now have just been served for 20 minutes and given publicity that he knows he's going to receive and it's not going to be a podcast. This one's going to be an article. So we took an interview and we're going to turn it into an actual article. And he then, on video, and remember, he checked the box saying he was allowing us to record him and use all the information that we captured. He now says something amazing about us. And we have a video testimonial that we can use in video, audio, and or written format. And I didn't have to ask him to do it for me, and I didn't have to invite him in. Now, he's clear that he's going to say something about it. It's not like we hid that this may be used as a testimonial. We're clear about that, so it's not, subterfuge.
Yeah.
But it was convenient.
If the fact is that if I'm paying you every episode, right? There's money going out. I mean, I both want it to be better for me, and I want to aggrandize you guys because it makes it look like I made a smart choice.
That's right. But now we put out those blog posts, those articles. We put them out every week. We put them in our newsletter. We send them to people who aren't podcasters, but now they get a profile on him. And now we're helping to expose his show and why he's podcasting and sharing all of that information. So we're helping his show too. Which how many other RSS servers out there or how many other podcast servers do that for you? Right. So it's helping grow our business. So these are ways in which you guys can use techniques like this and use recording even if you're not making a show out of it.
Yeah. So we're gonna thank you again.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break. We're gonna come back. I've got a little bit of stuff we're gonna do before lunch. It was really important. Here's the reason I'm excited about podcasting right now. I've just made the commitment that 2019 I'm going to, and I've already been doing it, I'm going to dramatically increase my, I'm going to increase the effort I'm making on the podcast because I believe of everything that I can do, that's the thing that's most likely to get a higher profile.
Michelle too. Michelle has a show. It's called Dear Michelle. She needs to get it launched.
I was looking at Tracy going.
Because she's like way behind getting it launched.
Yep.
So, but up until now,
Thank you.
but because I'm excited about it, I just wanted to make sure you guys knew the things that I thought were, it feels to me that the fastest way to grow your brand right now is through making a podcast, ideally doing it in front of the camera, so you have video and the podcast, and then using that thing, which might be 10, 15 minutes long, and building out lots of content. You break it up for LinkedIn, for Facebook, for Twitter, and you just blast content marketing out and make sure that you're tagging it right, and all those things, all the things you guys know how to do. I think it's really important. I felt like it was my obligation to tell you what I thought, based on all the opportunities that I get. In order to not have to be on the road as much, to get in front of more people, and to be recognized by a larger audience as an expert, that I can't think of a better thing to do than that. So, okay, it's about 17 after. Let's be back here in about 15 minutes, and then we will we'll start again, and then we'll have lunch. And did we do lunch?
Anybody lose a phone? Samsung?
Did we make lunch arrangements today?
Yes.
There will be menus passed around if they
Oh.
make it collective.
I don't know where I was. Hopefully somebody ordered for me.
Hey, I'm good.